Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game. So today we're continuing series on the MiSTer FPGA DE10 Nano project, and it's the last Thursday of October, and you know what that means? It's time for the monthly MiSTer News Roundup. And while it's going to be a short episode because not as many things happened, the things that did happen were absolutely spectacular, and we're going to get right into them. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But in the month of October, we have had like 8 different revisions of the Nintendo 64 core. Robert FPGAZumSpass keeps improving it, and we have basically over 85% of the North American library playable on the current core. There's so many games that can just be beaten from start to finish, and I will have a video on games that you can complete soon. But seeing the evolution of this core in real time on Discord and going through previews has been amazing. It was only like 4 months ago that we were playing one game, Namco Museum, and it was not operating very well whatsoever. Now we have a metric crap ton of games that you can pick up and play today, do whatever you want with, and just treat it like a real Nintendo 64 in spots. Stuff like Super Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, you can just sit down and play them like you would on real hardware. And this core still has more innovations to come. A little birdie told me that Transfer Pack might be supported by the time that this video goes live, but right now it's not quite there. Now honestly, I know you're going to ask about it. I have no information on when TLB is going to be done. That is a virtual memory paging system that allows like a handful of games, including some very popular ones, to run on the MiSTer FPGA core itself. I'm sure this will come later towards the development. Right now there's still games being added and some bug fixes going in, but honestly just wait for TLB. In the meantime, you can 100% play Superman 64, and it seems near to perfect on real N64 hardware, which is either good news or bad news depending on how big of a glutton of punishment you are. All jokes aside, if I show Superman 64, you know I'm going to make fun of it. But there's been so many improvements in the month of October alone. Some small improvements like the Glover camera right here used to bump into that entrance. Now it is 100% lined up, and some bigger improvements like Puyo Puyo Sun, which used to have graphical glitches and now seems to be 100% perfect as far as I can ever remember playing the game. We even got some awesome fixes for Doom 64, a really fun version of the game. It used to be that there was red blocks around all of the sprites showing the polygonal mesh in the background. Now it just plays like real Nintendo 64 hardware. So that's what's going on with Nintendo 64. It was long considered to be the impossible core, but Robert FPGAZumSpass loves to prove people wrong, and I can't wait to see what November brings. Robert said one game playable by Christmas, but it seems like we're more into the 85% of the North American library playable by Halloween. Congratulations, Robert, you exceeded all of our expectations again. Now moving over to the arcade side with Jotego, he is still diligently working on the Splatterhouse core, and as of the recording of this video it's not out yet, but he is getting all of the sprites in and is now dealing with the custom PCM sound chip. Do be aware that I release these videos on Thursdays, but I do need to record the audio earlier, so maybe this already came out, but Friday is usually the day that Jotego and his team release new beta cores, and considering tomorrow is the last Friday before Halloween proper, it might actually be tomorrow. Don't quote me on that, I'm just making presumptions, but I would look and see what he does. But if you've never played Splatterhouse before, this is one of those quintessential horror beat-em-ups, and the Namco System 1 board is such a fun time as well. And when Jotego makes a game on MiSTer FPGA, generally that means you're going to see more of those games on the hardware pop up quickly, because they all do use basically the exact same hardware, which I'm highlighting here. If you've never seen System 16's website, check it out. It goes through all of the hardware and games that run on those platforms. Now the System 1 doesn't have the strongest library ever. Splatterhouse is definitely going to be the banger, but Alice in Wonderland or Marson Maze here is another awesome game. So hopefully once we actually get Splatterhouse on MiSTer FPGA, you start seeing a lot more of these Namco System 1 board games coming over as well, because they basically all share a hardware platform. But I do hope we're playing Splatterhouse and FPGA by Halloween proper, but if Jotego misses by a week or two, no one's going to complain whatsoever, because a PCB for this game costs an absolute metric ton of money. It is not the type of thing you're going to want to purchase unless you're a hardcore collector and a huge fan of the game. Even if you go with the FM Towns version, which is almost arcade perfect, you're still talking about like $750 for a boxed copy. So just wait for that FPGA core. Now I know if I don't show this, people are going to ask if there's any Capcom CPS3 updates, and at the time of making this video there are not any. Jotego and his team are still working on reverse engineering the hardware, and do be aware that there are a lot of custom chips on this board, but it should still be doable. It's just going to take some time, and honestly I'm fine with that because there's only so many games on the CPS3, and Final Burn Neo do a great job of actually emulating those at home. Of course I do want an FPGA core like everybody else, but considering the size of the library of the CPS3, it isn't something that needs to be done next week, at least in my opinion, but I'm sure I'll see a lot of comments down below saying otherwise. But Jotego and his team are still working on it, and if you want to check out the games that exist on CPS3 because you don't know, I'll leave a link to System 16 below. But we hopefully will be playing CPS3 sometime in 2024, and there still has not been any update on Neo Geo Pocket or Pocket Color. It seems like it's getting closer here and there, so maybe that's the type of thing we might be playing it before Christmas. Now moving over to the hardware side of things, MiSTer Addons Reflex Adapt is in. I have shot a review and setup guide of this, and it's going to be premiering about mid-November when these things go back to restock, because I just finished shooting this maybe a day or so ago. But I will tell you right now, you guys have been asking for a video on this thing. I took my time, and it is absolutely spectacular, and big thanks to MiSTer Addons for sending this over. We're actually going to be doing a fun giveaway towards the end of November as well, so stay tuned for that, but big thanks to him for sponsoring this video and making that giveaway happen. It's going to be a fun pre-Christmas MiSTer giveaway extravaganza. But I will have a video on Reflex Adapt soon, and I know a lot of you have been asking me whether or not you should pick one up when the restock happens. I've been playing with this thing near constantly, both on my MiSTer as well as my PC. It's been a 10 out of 10, and you guys asked for a video, so look for that mid-November on a Thursday. It'll be showing up, and I'm excited to show it to you guys. Now moving over to the Sega Saturn side of things, this core has evolved over the last year, and it is so good right now. Although people were a little bit confused when it hit update all as to whether or not it was finished, it is not a completed core yet, so do keep that in mind. I did a video on this about 10 days ago talking about the fact that it still has improvements to be made, even though it's already amazing. But do be aware, if you haven't run update all yet, if you do that now, you're going to get the most current Sega Saturn core coming down. And I will have a setup guide next week as well. You guys have been asking for that. Since the setup has changed ever so slightly, we'll be doing that shortly. But what works on the current Sega Saturn core is amazing, because the Sega Saturn was a mess of silicon, the hardware architecture on it was complex, and that is down to Sega changing the actual hardware at the 11th hour to more strengthen the 3D capabilities of the console, because it was supposed to be a 2D powerhouse only, and obviously that shows in the footage here. But what works on Sega Saturn right now works so well. It's so much fun to see this evolve over real time, and it's been like a year since I've been doing previews, and I still have more scheduled. But the Sega Saturn library is so deep, especially when you get to the Japanese region, and I know a lot of people didn't actually own a Sega Saturn like I did back in the 90s when it was on store shelves. So for a lot of you, this is going to be the first time you've ever actually played Sega Saturn outside of maybe some PC emulation, which while has gotten better in the intervening years, is still a tiny bit shaky. I'm still waiting for stuff like light gun support to come to the core so I can play Virtual Cop 2 here with a real light gun. It's not there yet, but it might take some time, but it is something that is fun. But like I said earlier, just be aware that not every single game currently works. When you're testing this core out, when you're playing it via update all, if something isn't functioning, that is probably because the core isn't finished yet. So don't be surprised if some games don't work, some games freeze, or some games have glitches like you're seeing here. Just keep your expectations in check. This is not 100% done yet, but what does work works so well. It's an absolute blast to play, and it was only a year ago that Sega Saturn was a figment of our imaginations because it didn't even exist. And if you're looking for a good game to play this Halloween season on Sega Saturn, the English translation of Baroque just got improved. Can't recommend it enough, and it works great on the core. Now speaking of the core, you've also been asking for a dual RAM setup guide and a video talking about whether or not you actually want dual RAM on your MiSTer FPGA. So in late November, I'm going to be doing a dual RAM build and talking about whether or not you want dual RAM on your systems. But if you're looking to upgrade now, I'll leave links in the description below to the parts I use on MiSTer Addons, and at least some of the stuff that is showing up on camera in this segment is going to be what I'm giving away next month. It should be a ton of fun, a little early Christmas gift like I said earlier. But dual RAM has been all all the talk. I've been getting so many comments about it, so I'm going to show you what it takes to do a dual RAM MiSTer build and how you can kind of flop back and forth between single RAM and dual RAM if you really want to just have one MiSTer and not be compulsive like me and have 3 that I have in 3 different rooms in my house. So stay tuned for that dual RAM build you guys have been asking for, and it has now been shot. But honestly, my number one takeaway from the month of October is just how impressive the Nintendo 64 has gotten in such a short amount of time. We can play Super Mario 64, do a 120 star run in widescreen 16:9, and it feels as good if not better than playing on real hardware. It is miraculous, and I still can't believe we're doing it. But those are all the updates on the MiSTer FPGA side of things I have for you guys this October, and I can't believe we only have 2 more months left in the year. But you know what that means? We're getting really close to 2024, and I anticipate MiSTer's going to have another explosive year, and I can't wait to cover it. Short of that, that's what happened in October. Enjoy your Halloween, put on your costume, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.